and welcome to Segalicious, the series with a stupid name where we explore Sega games, both old and new. One of my all-time favorite Sega games is one with cool graffiti mechanics, a colorful cast of characters, and a really catchy soundtrack. Alex Kidd, this is not. Sorry kiddo. But today, we're going to be talking about Jet Set Radio. I first played this game around 11 years ago, I think, via its now delisted iOS port, and it's had a long-lasting impression on my life. So much of my time back in high school was spent listening to its soundtrack, blitzing through levels as fast as I could, and reminiscing on what I remember of the early 2000s, as this game is essentially a time capsule containing what the games industry used to look like. One where smaller development teams could crank out quirky and innovative titles without worrying too much about how the mainstream would receive it. I could go on for days and days and days, so for now, let's cut to the chase and spray it up in Jet Set Radio. Taking place in a city called Tokyo To, Jet Set Radio follows a teenage graffiti gang called the GGs. Initially having only two members, Gum and Tab, newcomer Beat joins the crew to increase its ranks, and their goal is to become number one. Standing in their way are rival gangs like the Love Shockers, the Noise Tanks, and Poison Jam, so there is some really fierce competition to be dealt with, and we can't forget about DJ Professor K. This dude runs the titular Jet Set Radio, a pirate radio station that plays some of the coolest music known to man, and the whole getup just oozes with style. It's not hard to find other games that feature narratives involving expanding a crew and taking over turf, but Jet Set Radio's colourful demeanour helps to set it apart, and this extends to its presentation. I'm pretty sure that Jet Set Radio was the first ever video game to use cel shading for its art style, resulting in visuals that are timeless. Despite this game being older than I am, it still looks incredible, especially when you upscale it to high definition. With that being said, the character models do lack a lot of detail, and hell, the game doesn't even have proper lip syncing in most of its cutscenes. It just switches between two face textures to mimic mouth movements, but this adds to its charm as a somewhat retro game, and I wouldn't have it any other way. All of the characters here have unique colors, animations, sound effects, and dance routines, so I would be stupid to complain about the character roster. These characters have been burned into the minds of Sega fans over the years, and it's really not hard to find tremendous amounts of fan art and cosplay created by die-hard fans of the series. There are even whole albums based on Jet Set Radio style, and after robbing a gas station in cold blood, I even bought one of them. Anyway, going back to the storyline now, the GGs encounter new friends and rivals along the way, with another goal of theirs being to resist the evil Goji Rikaku's influence. Basically, this Rikaku dude really doesn't like freedom of expression, and he would prefer if everyone in society would just kind of bow down to his big corporation. And with a crazy police officer named Onishima on his payroll, the GGs really have their work cut out for them. There are also rumors about a cursed record that, when combined, can summon a great demon, which sets the stage for the final boss. After spraying Rikaku's head, the game ends, and it turns out that there really was no demon. Instead, Rikaku's obsession with material wealth drove him crazy or something, I'm not too sure. Overall, the narrative of Jet Set Radio is pretty enjoyable, but I would be lying if I said that it was the title's primary focus. When analysing Jet Set Radio's gameplay, there's a big elephant in the room that the fanboy part of my brain wants to ignore, but in the pursuit of honesty, I feel compelled to say the following. Aesthetically, Jet Set Radio is a 10 out of 10 wood graffiti again, but the gameplay hasn't aged super well, just to put things lightly. You can skate around graffiti landmarks and run from the police with ease, but the level design and platforming is a bit rough. This game isn't what I would call a 3D platformer, but with how often you'll need to jump from rail to rail, the camera problems will definitely screw you over. Speaking of rails, unlike the Tony Hawk games, there is no grind button here. When you're in the air, the game will automatically magnetize you to objects, so you can grind rails and ride walls with no additional button presses. When performed intentionally, it feels really smooth, but sometimes the game does things that you don't want it to. For example, if you want to jump near a rail but land on the ground next to it, the game will sometimes force you to grind the rail anyway, and because you can't stop and dismount, you have to jump off, potentially causing you to fall all the way down the more vertical levels. Another issue involving verticality is how when you jump, the camera often faces upwards, meaning that you can't see where you're going to land. I've played Jet Set Radio so much to the point where it doesn't impact me anymore, but for newer players, this camera placement is very egregious and will definitely lead to frustration. I hate to be a Debbie Downer, especially because mastering the game's physics and sense of speed is part of its challenge, but you can tell that this is an early 2000s 3D game from how it handles, and although it must have been awesome for the time, the gameplay isn't as good as it used to be. On a brighter note, everything else is still wicked, especially the graffiti mechanics. Finding cans around the map will add them to your character, and when in front of a large marker, you begin a minigame that makes you perform motion inputs. Keep doing these to spray paint whatever landmark is in your way, and when you're done, you can move on to the next one. Levels in Jet Set Radio are essentially sandboxes filled with these graffiti spots, and you finish them once there's nothing left to spray. This may sound repetitive, but the varied level design, lighting conditions, and music keep the experience feeling fresh all the way through. And as the title is overall pretty short, its gameplay loop never overstays its welcome. Characters also have different statistics that dictate how they function, and Garam was one of my favorites as a kid. He had the perfect mix of style and substance, and it was awesome seeing him get down. Outside of these 2 levels in Chapter 2 of the story, you're never forced to play as a specific character, so if you want to stick with one over the others for the rest of the game, go for it. Every now and then, you'll encounter new characters who show up to your hideout. Win these confrontations, and then they'll join the GGs, becoming playable for future levels. There's also a ranking system that is influenced by how many points you get and how long it took you to finish a level, and hidden characters are also locked behind the higher ranks. This sounds fine, but to my knowledge, you can't replay levels that you finished, so if you were just shy of reaching the rank you wanted, you're gonna have to restart the game before it saves to play that level again. This ranking system means that Jet Set Radio caters to the crowd of players who will casually play it and not really care too much about its hidden contents, while also appealing to those who love to grind out the highest ranks in action games. This is one of those titles where the more you play, the easier and faster it becomes, and this reminds me a lot of the arcade games being released by Sega at the time. Once you make it past the initial hurdles and take the training wheels off, you're ready to start skating with the best of them, but just try not to get arrested. Enjoyable gameplay and story beats aside, it would be a war crime if I didn't dedicate a section to Jet Set Radio's soundtrack. Composed by Hideki Naganuma, the game's audio takes inspiration from a crap ton of genres, with some including hip-hop, J-pop, funk, and rock, and there are even a few licensed tracks here too. The original music is definitely the best, however, and this is mostly due to their catchy melodies and heavy samples. Naganuma, after Sega assaulted him with late 90s sampling CDs, decided to use these in his music, often chopping them up and sequencing them in bizarre yet captivating ways. I gotta say, hearing all of that when I was a kid was what truly made me a fan, as I had never heard music like that before in my life. It sounded so foreign and futuristic, and before I knew it, my entire life was dedicated to these silly looking cartoon characters. I even ordered a Beat shirt online way back in high school, and it somehow still fits me. It's really cool and it never goes out of style, so I wear it at home all the time. In 2002, Jet Set Radio Future, a sequel, was released, and this game is also incredible, so I'll get around to it one day. Despite there being a rabidly passionate community for the series, it unfortunately went on hiatus for a long time. Sega didn't feel the need to resurrect the series from its graffiti-covered grave, and despite developer Kuju Entertainment attempting to bring the series back for the Wii in the early 2000s, Sega turned them down. They were allowed to work on House of the Dead though, which is another Sega series that also has taken all of my money. Finally, at the 2023 Game Awards, Sega made a bombshell announcement, one that I had been waiting over a decade for. This is the face of a man who is at his happiest when Japanese video games are announced. God bless. And with that, we're at the end of the road. It was great fun revisiting Jet Set Radio for this video, and I plan on playing through it again soon to revisit its magical style for the bajillionth time. Despite the title being delisted on Steam, you can still purchase it on modern Xbox systems, as well as playing it on PC if you know how to sail the high seas. Knowing that a third game is finally real puts my mind at ease, it really does, and I hope you can match the genius of the 2 titles that came before it. Thank you very much for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next episode of Segalicious.